we saw some harrowing visuals coming through from Zimbabwe from the taxi strike of sort of supposed law enforcers obviously trying to get some order. But are they even registered police officers? I mean, there was a lot of talk that they're just sort of men off the street just with a hat and a jacket.
Well, again, it's an open question at the moment. What we know is, in the past, ZANU-PF has used paramilitary units, and there are many people on the books in the civil service who are not supposed to be there. So it could well be that people are operating semi-officially under ruling party, but not official policemen. That could well be the case, although I have no proof of that. But it accords with what's been happening, where the state has used various patronage networks in various parts of the economy to try to reproduce its support and to try to keep people on its side. But the shrinkage of the national budget is making this increasingly difficult, and certainly for the majority of people who fall outside of those patronage networks, life has become intolerable.
And the human rights violations of the brutality that's being carried out, what can you say about that?
Again, the brutality of the police, this is not a new thing. Whenever there's been elections, for example, especially in the 2000s, both the army and the rest of the security service have been involved in brutalizing Zimbabwean citizens. So this is not unexpected. And it's a long history of brutality by the Zimbabwean state, where they've increasingly had to rely on coercion to remain in power.
Brian, the reintroduction of bond notes, why are Zimbabweans so skeptical of that?
Because their experience in 2007, 2008 was that it created hyperinflation. They were simply unable to maintain their families. And the government continued to print money, and you reach one of the highest inflation rates in world history in that period. So people are desperately afraid of going back into that cycle, and what it means for their families, for their lives on an everyday basis, and for the huge uncertainty and danger which it causes for them at an everyday level.
The ban on imported goods, we saw a lot of protest at the Beitbridge border initially. What is the motive behind that? What is the supposed benefit of this ban?
The supposed benefit was to create a period in which the industry inside the country could grow, a kind of import substitution protection. Theoretically, it's in the long term it would be a good strategy. However, the problem is you immediately cut off the livelihoods of informal sector workers who rely on this without an alternative. So you're telling them they can't bring stuff in, but you don't provide them with an alternative. A plan like this, first of all, needs to be discussed with constituents, be discussed publicly. There needs to be a phased plan which allows this to happen over a long period, and which allows industry to grow while people still are able to have some kind of livelihood strategy. But it accords again with the ZANU-PF's modus operandi in terms of policy, which is to impose without discussion, without a long-term plan, and it's just typical of the manner in which policy has been made in Zimbabwe.
Brian, what can you say about some of the, censorship, services like WhatsApp, social media going down last week? This national shutdown is being sort of promoted through services like WhatsApp.
Yes. Well, again, we've seen the control of the media has been central to the Mugabe regime's control throughout the post-colonial period, but particularly from the 2000s when they emerged a strong opposition. So the shutting down of WhatsApp was perfectly in accord with that strategy of media control, and I think we're likely to see more of that as the opposition or popular dissent grows. We're probably going to see more of that.
Okay, so finally, Brian, how do you see this playing out? I mean, what do you foresee in the next couple of weeks, and what can the international community do to help, or what are they doing to help?
Look, it's very difficult to see what will happen. This is it's a very diffuse kind of dissent. There doesn't seem to be any particular centers organizing, or that's what it appears on the surface. It's too early to say. And movements like this can either roll out into a stronger opposition force, or they can dissipate. Depends on many factors. So it's very difficult to tell at the moment. I think what's clear is that you're going to see more government repression, you're going to see more police brutality, and possibly even the army being used in this circumstance, depending on the levels of dissent. What's been disturbing is the recent statements from the ANC saying, that this is some kind of third force which is pushing this. It's again displacing the crisis onto others and not looking at the internal factors which are causing it. And it's a kind of a narrative that comes out of the regional governments too often. And so they tend not to deal with the domestic issues which are causing these problems. And we saw that in the global political agreement in the 2008, where the main emphasis was about stabilizing a ZANU-PF regime and hoping that that stabilization would stabilize the country. When in fact, the most destabilizing factor in Zimbabwe now is the Mugabe regime. And that is the central problem that SADC is not dealing with.